We had a pleasant journey up from Yorkshire, took about 4 hours. Stopped off in Norwich at the supermarket to pick up some food for a couple of days. Picked up the boat in Herbert Woods in Otterham at the old bridge. And then we motored down the Thurn in the hopes of finding a hostel that would have satellite TV so that we could watch the cup final. We arrived just before 3. But unfortunately it was closed and they did not have satellite, and so we had to watch this peacock strut instead of the footballers, which as most people know is no contest. Having said that, this was just a beautiful specimen of a peacock. I mean, it did not have a feather out of place. The beauty of nature is just amazing, and I got some great shots of it. We'd had a little shower on the way up, and it was a little breezy as well. In fact, that breeze stayed around for most of the week, but we had some very nice weather in between. This was Anne's first trip on the Broads, and so we decided to take a little ride first of all to give us some overview. And in fact, she took the wheel and took us up from Dyke on our first little ride. Went down to the Bure, up past St. Benet's Abbey, past Fleet Dyke, the entrance to South Walsham, and the Antmouth, which leads up to Barton Broad, and Ranworth Dam, which leads down to Ranworth and Malthouse Broad, past St. Benedict's and all the wildlife, and then up into the Horning Mile, past the ferry, up past the windmill and the nice houses and the Swan, and finally into Salhouse. So here is that trip. Take it away, Paul.
Ain't no use in sitting there and dove-side when there's a boat on the Broad. Ain't no use in sitting watching telly. Oh, why do we have to be so bored? So we jump in the car down the A1, we're gone. By 10 tonight we'll be eating in the Swan. A boat is the best way to go traveling on. Give us a boat, we're alright. Yo!
So having reached Salhouse, we went back and decided to moor up in Ranworth that night. Didn't take any pictures on the way back. I had a good trip. Up early next morning, Ranworth stayed. Ranworth was my mum's favourite place on the Broads. I remember have a picture of us eating outside there with my dad. And it's a great place there. There's a lot of things happening, a lot of things to do, and it's a nice place just to sit and watch if you want to. That particular morning there were a few people going out for a sail on the Broad, and my mum and Anne had a look around the shops. Picked up some provisions, we had breakfast.
that you have a respite, but where are you going to?
That's Leicester. That's American.
Sorry,
It's a
now
good job.
what do I say for us? I must.
When my mum was in America, she kept saying to Sam, "That's Leicester," and Sam could not understand what she was saying. This little part of the stave here, I have a picture from 1974 of my dad walking down that stave that I always remember. Every time I go to that stave, that's the picture that I remember. And there's the stores where you can post a letter or pick up some bread and milk and a newspaper. And also we can take a walk up to the wildlife center. There's a walkway up there through the village past the church, but very often we went up to the top. In fact, when we came back we went up to the top, but we just took a little walk down the nature trail to the wildlife center on this occasion, just to have a little walk on land, as it were, and have a look at what was there. Wildlife center is a little museum. There's little things there, maps. You can look at the herons through the binoculars and chat to the people of what's been seen on the Broads. And on the way you see different kinds of the wildlife, with Daffy Duck here and the little ducklings freshly born earlier in the year. And there's, I presume, Donald. Nice shot of him. The male of the species, very beautiful and very well decked out. The female quite ordinary. It's a little like humans. And so we decided, let's take a big trip. We left Ranworth Broad and decided to go all the way down south through Great Yarmouth, over Braden Water to St. Olaves. So here is that trip, and the first part of that trip is back past the Thurnmouth where we started out, through Acle Bridge over to the Stacey Arms, where my mum always wanted to have us stop off. This is going under Acle Bridge, and here is the Stacey Arms. At the Stacey Arms, they've always had a lot of animals there. There'd be, in the old days, a pig would come, or a goat. And in recent times, they have donkeys and they have cattle. I don't know if it's a shorthorn or a longhorn. And a beautiful specimen of a windmill too. See a good picture of the boat here. It was not a great boat, but it was nice and flat and big for my mum. And then we went on. This stretch now down to Great Yarmouth is the longest stretch without a mooring. Then over Braden Water, past Burgh Castle, over to the Bell Inn at St. Olaves, the oldest hostelry on the Broads. We're just leaving Stacey Arms,
Yeah.
and we're going to go over Braden.
We're going over Braden.
We are.
And I love that.
We set out from the Stacey Arms about 4:15 and arrived in Great Yarmouth about 5:20. Tide was not fully high at that time, but as we went across Braden it began to run out, and so we had a uphill battle from there up to St. Olaves. But it was a nice evening and we enjoyed it. Took 2 hours to get from Yarmouth to St. Olaves, and we only just made it before the sun went down. Boats are not allowed to travel after sunset. Up early next morning, we decided not to go down to Oulton, but to return across Braden to the top end of the Broads. Is it nice to be back?
Oh, it's lovely. It's great to be back. I never thought I'd make it, but I have done. We're just going. Are we going down the new cut now?
No, we're going over Braden Water.
Oh, Braden Water. And drove nearly all the way over Braden in ship coming here last night.
And so we set out about 8:30 in the morning. Went past the Fisherman's Bar and Bird Castle and then out into Braden. Ever since our first trip in '74, when I explained to my mum that Braden was the biggest expanse of water on the Broads and right next to the sea, she was always in awe of it, and she would always say, "Oh, are we going to cross Braden Water?" It was never that rough, really. It's been much rougher on Barton Broad and Wroxham Broad, really, but that's just the way it was. But it is a beautiful stretch of water to go over. I remember taking this picture of her in 1974 as she stood on the back of the boat, and my dad took it through Braden. And here am I standing on top of the boat. The old dinghy in the back, and we arrived at Great Yarmouth at about 10:15. Went on through as usual.
Just come through the Yarmouth. It's lovely, and it's driving. It's lovely now, the sun's out again. Beautiful now.
That stretch from Great Yarmouth up to the Stacey Arms is a nice stretch. There's lots of scenic windmills and arable land along the way. I have many good pictures of that. And as usual, my mum wanted to stop off at the Stacey Arms again once we'd reached up there and see the animals again and take some pictures, get some milk on board and a newspaper. I have some wonderful pictures at the Stacey Arms. It's sometimes the clouds in the sky are amazing there. It's nice to have a stop off there. From the Stacey Arms, we decided that we'd just go on up a little bit farther, about half an hour, to Ecclebridge, where there's a nice restaurant, and we arrived there at about 12:30 and had a leisurely lunch there in a restaurant that was right next to the water, and there it is. And then from there, about 2:30, we hit the water again, and we went up to South Walsham. Here we are passing St. Bennett's, and here's Anne in South Walsham Broad. On the inner Broad, where the New Haven Trust have a wildlife sanctuary there. We can't moor up in the inner Broad, but we can cruise through it, and that's what we're doing right here. I have a picture of my dad in South Walsham Broad. It was his favourite broad, as usual, looking at the birds and the herons back in '74. As we came out of South Walsham that night, it was a beautiful evening, and Mum just sat on the front of the boat and took the wheel. We observed the boats, we observed the grebes making their nest. We saw St. Bennett's Abbey, built by King Canute before I was born. and it was just a nice evening. It's a relaxing place, the Broads, and my mum can just sit there on the boat and she can watch the world go by. Opportunities to pick up the binoculars and see the wildlife and see the wherries going past with their passengers. These are converted wherries which hold now about 8 passengers. And so they have a little boat on the back. Sometimes they have a sailing boat, and you're just able to watch the world go by and enjoy it and not have to worry about going from place to place. So on Wroxham Broad, as the nightfall began to come in, just feed the ducks a little bit, and we went to Salhouse that night and moored there on Salhouse. It was a nice quiet evening, and there's the Black Swan. And then we had dinner on the boat. Ready to go. It's always nice to get up in the morning on the Broads and you see the nice scene before you, and so we were up early, and we've actually moved up now to Horning Village Green and take a walk around, get some bread, get some water on board, because there was no facilities like that in Salhouse. We managed to moor up right on the green there, watch the old heron over the other side of the river, and then we went up to How Hill. And the wherry was just arriving at How Hill, where they were going to get a talk from Eric Edwards, the marshman up there, who cuts the reeds and takes care of the reed beds and has lots of insights into history on the Broads. And it's nice to chat with him and talk with him. He's a very interesting man.
This bundle of reed is 80 years old, and that bunch of reed is still as hard as the day it was born. It's discoloured, but that shows the quality of Norfolk reed. When you talk about
We're showing them here about those implements that were used in times gone by. The eel fork, where they used to stab the eels, now illegal.
Must be used today, but they're very collectible part of the Broads, you see.
Then we headed up there to Barton Broad, and it came on to rain. This is where Lord Nelson learned to sail. A little piece of history. You're on. Then we went up to the Wood Farm Inn. Smile. You're on candid camera. Next morning was the nicest morning we'd had. It was just a beautiful morning, and the river was just like a mill pond. And as we set off, we were the only boat on the river. Past Hunset Mill, where my most famous picture of my dad is at Hunset Mill. I got a picture of Anne outside it, but I always remember the picture that I had of my dad in 1974, framed on my wall. And there it is. Many moons ago. My dad really enjoyed that trip. And that part of the river there is different. As you travel the Broads, each place is different. Some places are wide, and look at that view. That's just magnificent, beautiful. Important rituals of the Broads, the cup of tea as we put the water in the boat, and Anne wants to take a picture of that view that I'd just taken. We're moored up here in Stalham, and so we would take a walk into the town as we beautiful morning. That was the best morning of the week, I think, and here we are just cruising out of Stalham and as usual watching the world go by. I mean, if you have a restaurant or if you have a hotel room or whatever, you think, oh, it would be nice to be right on the river. But when you get a Broads boat like that, then your hotel room is 360 degrees all the way around, views of the river. And when you stop, you eat in the restaurant on the river. And it is just a very pleasant time. Back over Barton Broad again, the man following in Nelson's footsteps. This is Ørsted. Whenever we would pass this house, I would say, one day I want to buy that house. It's a beautiful house. In Ørsted, there are many nice places like that. One of the guys working at How Hill as a warden, his home was right on the river there, and he said he'd lived there as a child and been brought up there. He said it's a wonderful place, and he's a country boy. He never wants to leave the country. And just look at those views. And you get all this just from the boat. I'm actually sitting on top of the boat right here. And then it's taking us through it. But it is a wonderful way to see the English countryside. And if the weather's great, you just can't beat it. And that's one of the reasons I like it too, having been in Hong Kong, and with all the hustle bustle, I can get on my boat and just quietly go through the rivers like that. I just wish the engine wasn't so noisier, but a sailing boat's just not practicable. So we came back and I decided to shoot a few shots of Eric with his reed and his sedge. This is sedge, the bit they put right on top of the house, which is more flexible than the reed. This is Eric Edwards. How long you been here, Eric?
Since 1967, as a marshman.
Yeah.
Cutting thatching material. I work for the Broad Authority, but I work at How Hill here on the marshes. And I still like some of the old ways of cutting materials, cut with the old side. And this is sedge used for ridging.
You must enjoy working in this nice environment,
Oh yeah, it's wonderful here really, as you can see. Oh, you get the odd days which are a bit miserable, but it's like everything else in life. You get good days and you get bad days. There are many TV programs about the Broads and about East Anglia. It's quite a character. You can see there how my mum and Anne, they were able to sit there and they could see all this going on just over the side of the boat. There is Daffy Duck again.
How Hill is a special place. I think the first couple of times I was on the Broads, I just sailed past and took a picture, but didn't stop. Then I discovered the eel catcher's cottage and the nature trail, and finally the electric eel, which is an The boat takes a circular trip through the dikes on the opposite side of the river to How Hill and comes across a great variety of wildlife. I've seen pike, heron, and even an osprey here. And here is the boat, tied up for us to go to a hide from where we... So she needs her afternoon nap. I got some nice shots of plants too, and mushrooms or toadstools, and then we headed back. Different kind of scenery here. It's very peaceful. I believe that's Eric's office right there. And then we headed down and through Ludden Bridge, and we're actually now passing St. Benedict's, where in this particular place there's always a lot of wildlife, and this is coming now into Horning and the Ferry Inn, a place where we've eaten many times. We went there with the kids a year from now, just 1 year later. That ferry is an ancient ferry and has been there for 1,000 years. No kidding, 1,000 years. And there's the windmill. It was for sale actually for £230,000 at that time. It's just like a 3-bedroom place. It's not very big, but good place. And now in Wroxham. Perhaps the centre of the Broads in terms of the commercial aspect. So after a brief stop over there, we headed back up, and this is another place I always say I want to buy when we pass it. And this was on the market for £400,000. Imagine living there. I just have this dream to live by the side of the Broads like that and have my own little boat and be able to go out when I want. That place there sold for $180,000, and the guys tore it down completely. And I think the reason why it was cheap is probably it was the wood probably had woodworm or something, because they actually rebuilt it the same design. Well, next morning took another ride, and especially the shots around St. Benet's that day were very pretty. I wanted to go up to Potter Heigham and go under the bridge. We had specifically hired this boat because it was low. It was from Potter Heigham, and they said it would go under the bridge all right. And never been under the bridge at Potter Heigham. There you are. It's a low bridge, you see, and it's difficult to get under. You have to have the navigator to take you under the bridge. But having said that, if the tide's up, you can't get under. So always the tide seems to be up, and I can never get through to Hickling Broad. Well, I explained that to the guy and said, wow. I said, when can I get through? And he said, it doesn't look like you'll get through this week at all. I said, you know, I've got this boat from you so that I could get up to the top end of the Broads. I've never been up there since I was a teenager. And so he said, look, take one of the day boats here. Just take it. I'll complimentary for you. And just take it for the day. And so we jumped aboard this little day boat, which is very kind of him, and we headed up to Hickling Broad. I was here when I was a teenager, and we took a trip from Darfield Church with Jeff Eyre and Rita. And my first taste of the Broads was Potter Heigham Bridge and this Broad here where we took a boat on it, but I've never been back. And so this opportunity was great. We couldn't bring our big boat, but we were able to take this little boat and go and explore a little bit over the other side. It wasn't the same, but it was a nice little trip. Everywhere you go on the Broads, it's different, and so they are different little scenery in different places. Here the reed is making like an alleyway, and Mum and Anne enjoying their little ride. And we came through to Hickling Broad and Horseymere and the windmill there, and it began to hailstone, and there you are, hailstones 1/4 of an inch across, landing in the boat. It was funny weather for that 2 hours. I mean, I've never seen skies like that on the Broads any time. And here it began to pour with rain. I mean, a real squall. It poured it down. And look at that sky. I mean, it's black almost. I mean, I could have moved the camera around a bit, but then it wouldn't have had a shot at all. And then in no time at all, the sun came out, and you had a blue sky as you look back. And as you look forward into the sun, you had these amazing shots. And so you had both. I turned the camera back one way and get a nice colourful shot, and then turn it the other way and get shots into the sun. And there we are, we went under Potter Heigham Bridge and had a nice meal in Potter Heigham, and then jumped into our boat and headed back down the Thurn, again with those clouds in the distance. That squall, that thunderstorm, whatever it was there, just slowly went down there and drenched everybody in its path. But it sure gave us some interesting pictures. I mean, those days where it's just a blue sky is one thing, but when you get these kind of skies, it really is great. Good for the pictures. Just amazing shots. And as usual, we can just sit in our boat and just marvel at it and just enjoy it from the water. And when we got back to St. Benet's, with the sky cleared up by the rain and the sun behind us. It again gave me perhaps the best shots I ever shot of St. Benet's Abbey were these shots because of the light. It's amazing when you look at these places and think you're looking at 1,000-year-old history. Sometimes I think Constable ought to have been painting around here on a day like this. Look at that boat. That's an old boat, and a beautiful boat. And again, the weather here is giving us shots that normally you wouldn't see, and even good shots of my mum as the sun shines in on her. So back into Ranworth Broad. Those evenings like that are just special on the Broads. The two times of the day I love: very early morning when you wake up and the sun's shining in and it's beautiful. You sit on the top of the boat and have a cup of tea and have your breakfast. And the other time in the evening time, see that guy sitting there on his boat, and that's what he's looking at. He's watching the sunset over Norwich. Just beautiful. That happens many times. Well, we're up next morning. It's Ranworth, Malthouse Broad. Another day in Ranworth. After breakfast, we decided we'd take our usual walk over to the church and have the leek and potato soup that they do there. While my mum had the leek and potato soup down in the little cafe there in the church hall, then Anne and I could climb the 99 uneven steps to the top of the church, which clock says 10 to 4, but in fact it was 11 in the morning. That would have never happened in the old days, but now people have watches, I suppose. There we are, the Cathedral of the Broads, St. Helens, Ranworth. And a very interesting church. I mean, the rood screen there is a classic, the only one not destroyed by Oliver Cromwell. Another interesting relic to be found in the church is the Antiphona, a service book written by the monks of Langley Abbey on the River Yare 500 years ago. It has 285 sheepskin pages with 19 illuminated miniatures. It is all in medieval Latin and has psalms, hymns, readings, prayers, and antiphons, which are versibles and responses set to plainsong. These antiphonas were used in, and many still are, in monasteries around the country. So here I am up at the top of the church, looking over Malthouse Broad. There are the moorings on the other side of the Broad. then a strategic view over the Broads, over Ranworth Broad, and Ranworth Dyke leading up to the Bure. And the old farmhouse, and there's Mum. Out, and the wind that we had all week, making it look as though it was a sea of barley there. Time for our cup of tea and soup. The old place, the familiar place. And on the way back we saw this mole. There you go. So, watching the local fauna. Well, it's raining just leaving Ranworth. It's going to go up to Horning. And it's still 10 to 4 by that clock. And so we left Ranworth. And I said to my mum, well, last time in Ranworth now. And she said, well, it's the last time I'll ever be here. But, you know, she made it again 1 year later. So, up through Horning. What can we do on the last night? Well, the best thing to do is go have a meal in the Swan. But I mean, look at that weather. I always take pictures. The end of a really good holiday.
Some